I now give the floor to Mr. Khaled Khiari.
Madam President, since we last briefed this Council on developments in Ukraine, we have seen an alarming escalation of fightings, while there was no significant diplomatic progress. Russian attacks continue to intensify, with mounting civilian casualties and devastation across Ukraine. On 9th of April, following Ukraine's earlier proposal of an Easter ceasefire, the Russian Federation announced a 32-hour Easter truce from 11 to 12 April. Ukraine responded that it would reciprocate. We welcome initiatives, even a limited one, that would bring respite for the civilian population. We regret, however, that this temporary pause in fighting that could have allowed the peaceful celebration of Orthodox Easter was not respected. Hostilities close to the front lines and resulting civilian casualties were reported throughout the holiday weekend. Attacks quickly escalated thereafter. 3 consecutive nights of Russian aerial strikes between 13 and 16 of April targeted multiple regions across Ukraine and resulted in dozens of civilians killed and injured. On the night from 15 to 16 April, the Russian Federation launched its deadliest attack so far this year, targeting Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, Kyiv, Sumy and Kharkiv regions. In the city of Odessa and Dnipro, residential buildings were hit, reportedly killing at least 9 and 5 people respectively. In total across the country, at least 20 people, including at least 1 child, were reportedly killed and dozens more injured by this attack. Madam President, of greatest concern is the ever-increasing loss of civilian life resulting from continued attacks. Last month alone, at least 211 civilians were killed and 1,206 injured in Ukraine, according to the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights. In total, since February 2022, OCHR has verified that at least 15,578 Ukrainian civilians, including 784 children, have been killed. Another 43,352, including 2,668 children, have been injured. In the Russian Federation, local authorities, including in the Kursk, Belgorod, and Bryansk regions bordering Ukraine, have reported increasing civilian casualties. In one of the latest incidents on 16 April, a woman and a teenage girl were reportedly killed in an Ukrainian strike in Krasnodar region of the Russian Federation. Madam President, Ukraine's critical civilian infrastructure continues to be hit. Ukraine's Danube and Black Sea ports were reportedly targeted over the past month. These ports are critical to enable the export of Ukraine agricultural products at a time of increasing concern over global food insecurity. Russian attacks on Ukraine's railway infrastructure have also continued, including today. In central Lviv, UNESCO heritage sites have once again come under fire. As of March 2026, UNESCO has verified damage to a total of 519 cultural sites since the start of the war. Civilian and energy infrastructure in the Russian Federation has also reportedly been hit during this period. Attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure are clearly prohibited under international humanitarian law. They must stop immediately, wherever they occur. Madam President, we welcome the exchange of prisoners of war that brought at home 175 service members and 7 civilians from each side on 11 April. 163 of the returned Ukrainians has reportedly been held captive since 2022. In interviews conducted by Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, many recently released Ukrainian prisoners reported that instances of torture has decreased or ceased in 2025 and 2026. However, all of them say that they had been subject to torture or ill treatment during their captivity. We remind each side of their obligations under international humanitarian law in their treatment of prisoners of war. And we again urge the Russian Federation to grant the United Nations unimpeded access to all detainees. The latest prisoner exchange was the 72nd since the start of the war. We commend all involved in facilitating these exchanges and urge the efforts to continue for the sake of those held captive and their relatives. Madam President, we urge all involved to redouble their efforts to return all deported and forcibly transferred Ukrainian children. The United Nations is committed to supporting this critical and urgent work. As part of these efforts and the implementation of her mandate, the Special Representative of the Secretary-General for Children and Armed Conflict has just concluded her first visit to Ukraine. Madam President, on Sunday, 26 April, we will mark 40 years since the devastating Chernobyl disaster, the most serious nuclear accident to ever occur, the impact of which is still felt today. This anniversary also serves as a warning of the scale of destruction we could witness in case of another incident, intended or unintended, while the war continues to endanger Ukraine's nuclear sites, especially the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest nuclear facility in Europe. It is imperative that all military activities near nuclear sites cease immediately. We also urge both sides to fully cooperate with the ongoing efforts by the International Atomic Energy Agency to ensure safe and secure operations of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, including its access to uninterrupted power supply. Madam President, 5 years in, the Russian Federation's full-scale invasion of Ukraine continues to test international law, drive deepening divisions, and undermine the broader rules-based multilateral order. Beyond the immediate conflict zone, the war has heightened regional tensions and insecurity, with drones reportedly sighted this month in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland. We must remain steadfast in our commitment to ending this war, guided by the principle and obligations set out in the United Nations Charter. Building on the efforts undertaken by the United States, it is essential that the international community maintain sustained attention and coordinated diplomatic engagement aimed at securing a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire. Such efforts must lay the foundations for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, in accordance with the United Nations Charter, international law, and the relevant resolution of the United Nations. We cannot afford the risk of the conflict spiraling out of control with ever higher human costs and unpredictable consequences for us all. The United Nations stands ready to support all meaningful initiatives that can help bring an end to the suffering and advance the prospects for peace. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank Mr. Khiari.